Hey everybody, my name is Rydo, and before I start playing the game Loom, I am presented with a question, and it's probably a question everybody should consider and very few will. Which version of Loom do you play? Now, by default, the only one you can find and buy is the Steam or Good Old Games CD version that was released in 1992 that has talking sound effects, but so no reading. But on top of being a talkie, as they used to be called, it also has an entirely re-recorded soundtrack and has been censored for some of the violence a little bit. And all the dialogue had to be abridged because it had to be shorter lines of audio because it had to be squeezed onto a CD-ROM. So it's a massively, massively different game, considering how Loom is only about a 3-hour game in total. Uh, when you have the audio has been completely redone, the dialogue has been completely redone, the graphics have been completely redone because it's 256 colors instead of the original 16 colors for EGA. Every single thing is different, and it sounds like it would be better, but it kinda isn't. And that's a weird question. Now, if you buy the Steam version and look in their discussions group, there is a forum post that's in their comments that tells you where you can download the FM Towns version of the game, which is this one. And you can download that for free there. You could probably find the FM Towns version and the EGA version online as abandonware for free on the internet. I'm not going to tell you how, but I imagine a simple search would be easy enough to find it. And the FM Towns version, by its own creator, is said to be the better 256 color version. It's not as censored as the EGA version. It doesn't, however, have the voice acting, so the dialogue is completely intact from the original game. And the FM Towns version, which FM Towns is a reference to the kind of audio, I believe, that it was released. Maybe there was a computer system, is what Wikipedia says, called Japanese FM Towns Computer. So the FM Towns version is 256 colors and the new digital soundtrack, but the dialogue and the story remain largely the same as the original EGA version that is 200. That is more familiar. You'll also see, if you look in the comments on Steam, that there's an Amiga version that one commenter says is better than that. Trying to get an Amiga version to run won't work in this emulator directly, so a SCUM VM is what we're using. We've used this on several other point-and-click adventure games, so I wouldn't bother trying to get that to run. However, that commenter does say it's better than the FM Towns version. Arguably, though, you should just do the original. The idea here is if you had a first draft of the Mona Lisa, and that's what everybody knows, and everybody's nostalgic for that, and it uses 16 colors, and then somebody else came back and made a second draft of the Mona Lisa, and it uses 256 colors, and it looks slightly different. Which one do you pick? And then if there's a third version that comes out in the next year, and it uses even more colors, in let's say the Mona Lisa is twice as big this time, which one is the real Mona Lisa? That there is kind of a strangeness in the fact this is something that happened in early PC gaming to have a game that originally came out in its first version in 1990. It came out with a completely, or at least drastically redone version in 91, and then it came out with an even more drastically changed version in 1992. We haven't seen that in modern PC games too much, except for when you start seeing DLC and patches come in. That's enough talking for now, though. Let's look at the intro. It's not amazingly great as far as an intro, but let's just compare the game. I want to point out everything in the ScumVM emulator, which you can search that and install it. The only thing I'm going to change here is I'm going to override the graphics to make it 3 times bigger. So you'll be able to see the pixels, so we can do a visual comparison. But when I actually start playing the game, I'll go to high quality 3 times, which will do some smoothing and make it look better. I'm not going to try to do any kind of aspect ratio correction. I'm going to have it in full screen mode. Everything else is going to be left at default, so the audio might be a little bit loud. And if you want to run ScumVM, to run the Steam version, which is probably the easiest way, you can get a newer version of ScumVM than what it is just by default in Steam. And so to add it, you just click Add Game, and then you browse probably to your C drive if that's your main hard drive, Program Files, x86, Steam, Steam Apps, Common, Loom, and then you click Choose, and then it will bring up the settings, which you could leave everything the same way, but again, I would recommend go up to high quality 3x. More than likely your computer can handle that, and go up to full screen mode. And then if you want to adjust the volumes or anything else like that, click OK, and there you have the Windows Steam version using a much better interface. If you just launch it by clicking the play button in Steam, it works, but it also pops up some prompts and it shows you a older version of Scum, so you don't have this nice looking interface at all for a launcher. It's just this gray boxes. But let's compare the intros and show how this goes.
Please choose your skill level.
So there's some weirdness on the skill level too, and here you can hear it's talking to you. You kind of need to play an expert.
Please choose your skill level.
It's repeating itself. In the expert, in the FM Towns version, or you will miss out on a single scene. So I think you probably could do expert on any of them. At least when I play, I'm going to try that. One of the things that the problem is with the CD-ROM version, and it probably
choose your skill
is
level.
the main problem of the CD-ROM version. It cuts the audio off, and you can't listen to any of the songs in its completeness.
Please choose your skill level. Welcome to the age of
just because they couldn't fit the audio on the CD-ROM. So listen to the exact words and listen to the music. I'll go quiet here. This is the new LucasArts logo. LucasArts is now out of business. Well, bought by Disney. Also, some music is in the wrong place in this version. They move songs around. I'm not going to get too much into the story of Loom yet. We'll get into that when we play the game. Take note of how many colors and how the colors look. It looked like it froze there.
Rise, son of Signa. It is the dawn of your 17th year. The elders await you in the sanctuary.
Most of the close-ups in this game version are also cut out. So you just saw a face close-up of conversations. Most of that in the CD-ROM Talkie version is cut out, and you see them just talking by waving their head or waving their arms. That was simply because that was their solution. It's a bad solution to find out, to fix the fact that they couldn't sync lip flap with the dialogue, which, I mean, games even now don't always sync lip flap with dialogue. So they should have just left that content in. And so, like I said, the Steam version immediately brings up the ScumVM prompt here to press 9 to toggle text on the screen or not. We'll go ahead and hit it. And that's unavoidable. You cannot have it not do that. It's somehow hard encoded in there, which seems odd. When you hit F5, if you're not familiar with ScumVM, on the launcher it looks like this with the pop-up. You have resume, save, load, options, return the launcher, all of that. Very fewer options if you just launch it from Steam, and it's just an ugly gray thing. So I would recommend just downloading the newest version. So this point and click adventure, we're not going to go too far, but take note. You can click on this.
The last leaf of autumn.
And it falls off the screen, and this is above the screen. And I hit F9 and it didn't trigger. So let's walk this way to just the next scene. Loom is kind of an amazing game because it's built around music. You don't use words and adverbs like you do in most other point-and-click adventure games, particularly LucasArts adventure games. Instead, you will be given a ability to choose letters and play songs, and the songs will change things. So notice the stars, notice all of this. Let's see if we can go somewhere and do something. Just pick up gold.
Don't these people ever clean up after themselves?
So, this is the talking 256 thing. Let's CD-ROM version. Let's return to the launcher now and look at the FM Towns version for comparison. Now, what's weird about this is in the FM Towns version, you aren't by default able to choose a difficulty. You had to go hack the file. Fortunately, the ScumVM emulator puts it right back in here, so you can just choose expert. Now listen to the audio. Notice the old Lucasfilm Games logo, not LucasArts. This is less of a resolution, it seems, than before, and mostly it looks the same, but it feels like it's running smoother, and that their decisions to put a pixel in a place seem to be better thought out. Now listen, when you look at the dialogue, you'll notice he's saying different lines now. It's almost exactly the same, but it's actually quite longer dialogue when all is added together. So visually it looks the same, but you may notice it's not talking. And so there's no real good choice between the two. Either you have the bad dialogue that's been abbreviated and rewritten, or you have the good dialogue and have to read the whole game. You may also notice that the music is playing and looping in the background. And so let's move on to the other scene. Mostly this looks the same, or at least similar to the previous art, perhaps at a slightly different resolution. It's rather strange that this game has 3 different versions released over 3 years, but that's what happened because there were so many different PCs out there that didn't have the same interfaces. Like, it would be a modern equivalent, I suppose, would be if there were versions of a NVIDIA version of a game and an AMD version of a game, and they were drastically different. And let's say that there was an Intel integrated graphics version of the game too, or an AMD integrated graphics, because I think they have something like that too. Having 3 drastic different games seems crazy. I suppose on a certain level we still have Xbox and PlayStation and Wii versions of games, but they tend not to be that different, or at least not noticeably different. As we look here, this looks slightly not as detailed as the previous version. And like, we'll click on this. People ought to clean up after themselves. So if I played this version originally, I would have to read out loud everything, and that's one thing I really don't enjoy doing on my channel, is the idea of having to go and read through even 3 hours of gameplay. So that was the version that is the best 256 version. However, when we launch this, you're going to notice the colors look completely different, and so if you have any love for the original, you're probably going to want to just play the original. We're back to the point where you can choose your expert level, which is odd. And you notice the prompt is a little bit different here. So it went from being able to choose to not being able to choose to being able to choose. Now listen to this audio, though. And notice that this Loom logo is sharper. It doesn't have a bunch of light bloom around all the letters. When you're talking a game that's built around previous audio elements, redoing the audio changes things. Also, because this is 16 colors, now every single color seems more important to be used. This bright blue background here has to be just a bright blue background because it can't be anything else. Instead of a starry appearance in the back with the sky, they can only afford to have a little bit of purple and a little bit of cyan. The rocks are just purple and black. Like, there's literally only 16 colors capable of being on this scene right now. And PCs used to be black and white. They used to not even be able to do graphics at all, even if they were black and white. There was a long time on PCs where you would have to configure and put in different video cards that would do CGA, EGA, XGA. After we got up from XGA to VGA and then Super VGA and up to the point where we are now, where it's just basically put a video card in there and it'll do whatever your monitor could probably do, unless you're trying to do 12K or something incredibly large. That after we fixed most of the issues with graphics in PC, we also had to fix the audio. So it's not unheard of to have different audio styles of games too. One that could do Sound Blaster 16, one that could do Sound Blaster 1632, one that could do several other things. Notice here the audio is not looping, and boy does this look more simplistic. Oddly, even if you were playing this on a cell phone, this would probably not squeeze down well or look that good compared to a modern game, but what can you do about it? This fire, on the other hand, looks better, in my opinion. I feel like there was more effort put into the original version, and the quick remakes really stem from lazy remakes of just trying to sell it. Because almost certainly, yes, you would be able to sell it with more colors, because that was a major selling point. And you would be able to sell it with better, with talking instead of just audio, written dialogue. So the only thing I want to now compare to you, though, is that by default is what they looked like. The only thing I did was change the scaling. So for every pixel, it goes up to a 2x2 when it's 2x. And it goes up to a 3x3 grid when it's 3x. However, you can do better than that. You can make a 3x3 grid and then blend the edges to smooth it out. And so that's what high quality 3x should be. And frankly, for anybody that's trying to play on a 1080p screen, should work just fine on any of these old games. So, when we look at the same intro that we just saw, it should be noticeably a little bit smoother. Hopefully, you're going to try to pay attention to sharp edges. For instance, maybe the M in the trademark. You're going to look at the stars. You're going to see that these elements are hopefully a little bit better. But maybe not, too, because when you're talking such a low resolution as this game, it may be very hard to tell. There's certainly a lot of information on the ScumVM website that shows there are many different ways you can use photo filtering, and that's what this really is it is a constant video filter, just like you would do to a photo in something like Photoshop. So it's really hard to tell. I'm not even gonna try to lie. You'd have to look at these edges and see if these look like smoother lines right here than they used to. And sadly, I don't have the capability to go side by side and show them. So, as we approach here, the three intro areas that I chose, which aren't much, really, the question gets back to the original question: what is the right loom to play? And I have to say, you probably should just take the bad story as it is in the Talkie version, save yourself the talking, and try to enjoy the audio that as it plays in the CD-ROM version first, and then if you majorly enjoyed the game, might I recommend going back and playing the EGA version. I don't think it is probably worth your time to do the FM Towns version unless you want to do a third run of the game. Which, in total, since it's only about 3 hours of gameplay per run, you could do the main Talkie version, know all the solutions, then do a speed run through the EGA version to compare, then do a speed run through the FM Towns version to compare. And all of that would certainly be an interesting academic venture. So, I have no idea why they changed the Loom logo here, but then they changed a lot of things. This extra bloom on Loom to me screams that they were having trouble displaying it on the 256 colors, or they just wanted to use more colors. So here, when you look at the background, it's multiple bands of shades of purple, and when you look at his eyes, there's a lot of colors and there's a lot more shading on his robe. I can't really complain about a game going from 16 colors to 256. It's something I'd be willing to just objectively say is better. Even if you are changing the original, it's hard to make an argument for that. But because they changed the audio, which sounds different here, and I don't think is as good, honestly, and because they changed the dialogue and censored out just a little bit of the violence, maybe only in one scene there's a little bit of blood that's censored out, that it feels like they changed things. Particularly like right here, this looks completely different in the EGA version than it does in the FM Towns version. And it's a hard decision, certainly. Now let's go back to the main game and one more run. And it's hard to tell the difference, but this is a nice sneak peek of how things worked. How I set up for some of these games.
Please choose your skill level.
Because you, on rare occasions,
to the age of the
do have
guilds.
different setups of games, different versions. I've played a lot of the Lego games on PC. They're pretty terrible ports. They don't run on my PC. They lock up and lag. But I know for a fact that on the Xbox 360 versions of those games, they ran perfectly fine. So often it is a case that when you find certain games on PC, it might be worth looking at the discussion and looking at the reviews to make sure the PC version is good. A lot of times games are made for PC and then the console versions aren't as good. But often when that complaint is made, it's complaints about the console versions not running as smoothly or having as many frames, where when it's the reverse situation, you often have PC ports that can't even launch.
It is the dawn of your 17th year.
Here, when you see the
elders
color
await
banding,
you in the
it's
sanctuary.
different colors and smoother.
I've never known them to weave such a bright messenger nymph. I wonder why the elders want to see me.
I really don't see why they
I'd better
would
get
have.
down to the village.
It really screams a lack of planning, I suppose, to just say, to have a game come out 3 times in a year and not realize that the
last leaf
dialogue
of autumn
would need to be shorter if they were going to have a talking version. Maybe they didn't know this was ever going to happen. Maybe they really thought it was just going to be text only. But with the high quality smoothing, it's even harder in this version to see what it's doing, because everything is already a little bit smoother and a little bit better looking. So yeah, the Steam version is probably the best version for you to get. If you have the Steam version, there's a forum post, remember, to get the FM Towns version, which restores the dialogue in exchange for the audio. This game probably would do well for a quick and simple reboot. It's famous in part. I recently played The Secret of Monkey Island Remastered, and in there they do an advertisement for this game, which came out right before The Secret of Monkey Island originally came out. And so that would be rather nice if they did do a remake, but also it's not very well remembered either. It has a slightly strange musical interface, and there's definitely some issues here. Again, notice the audio is not playing at all. It just doesn't play. So it's really hard to recommend doing the one Steam version only. I think you have to have both experiences. Well, that's going to be it for this little question spotlight of, as far as I know. I could certainly go into more detail about what things were changed. You can look on the Wikipedia if you're interested. There's also YouTube videos out there by other people that go into more detail about the different changes. But on the whole, you should be moderately informed on which versions are the versions to play. Thank you for watching this video. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. All that tells YouTube that my videos are worth watching and helps me out. If you want a friend or follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, Google+, or Steam, all of those links are down below in the description box. Thank you again for watching. Have a good evening.